Welcome back to Have You Heard? My name is Zoe. I'm the managing director and one of the co-founders here at The Social Shepherd. And today I'm joined by Kelly.
Hello.
Who is our people manager and EA. And we've been tasked today to talk about company culture, which is a minefield of a topic, to be entirely honest. And something that you look at really closely within your role here at The Social Shepherd. So I think we can kind of split this into two different sections. There's culture, which is kind of, to me, what the company feels like, what we're valuing. Yeah. And then there's like the operational side of things. And so like we're obviously consistently going to be evolving that. You know, we onboarded Hi Bob as our sort of HR holiday booking progress channel, which was your lovely first task that you loved. You and Bob are best friends.
Yeah, we're dating.
Yeah. And then there's like the cultural side of things. And like I actually have been doing some new starter inductions this week. And like one thing that's really hard to keep a hold of at times, I think is a really interesting topic here, is like gossip culture.
Yeah.
And something that I've been saying to everyone that's a new starter is just saying like, I have like a zero tolerance policy for it. And like I say that, but naturally every single business, there's going to be a little bit of like chitter chatter, but I just don't think it's anything. I don't think it's good. Like you don't want your name thrown around in those conversations. So from a cultural perspective, I mean, I think we're pretty good as a business. And I think, you know, there is a limited amount of that happening. So when it does happen, it potentially feels bigger than it may have. Because you said to me the other week, you were like, yeah, but Zoe, normally you wouldn't be aware of these things.
And that's it. And I think in my experience of anywhere I worked before, you know, you wouldn't be hearing about this. It'd be nipped in the bud before it even got anywhere close to you hearing about it. But I think, you know, in one way it's like a good thing because it shows, you know, that people feel comfortable to kind of have conversations. But then equally, you know, I think it can be a bad thing because sometimes people feel too comfortable and discuss things that they probably shouldn't be discussing.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing is like, I think like I don't know if it's post-COVID. I don't know if it's just like new generations coming into the workplace. She says on like the cusp of millennial, like between Gen Z and millennial. So I can't really like talk. But I think people have different expectations of their workplace now. And there's been, I think we've shared a couple of podcasts between the two of us where people have kind of discussed this. And interestingly, whenever I was up at Bath Spa Uni lecturing, this sentiment was kind of shared between the lecturers of the students' expectations on university. But I do think people expect more from their workplace.
100%. People expect us to be like a full 360, you know, we're their employer, we're their therapists, we're their confidence, we're their kind
we're their social life.
We're their social life, we're their outlets to kind of vent their frustrations. And actually, you know, it does put a lot of expectation and pressure on us as employers. But I think, you know, that balance of trying to kind of keep that open door where you are that person, but then also, you know, keep it really professional.
It's a hard one because it feels like particularly with like entry level, where people coming in, it's their first job, they haven't had any experiences to know where the boundaries sit. So you almost have to teach people where boundaries sit and like what's professional in a workplace and kind of what to do there. And I think that if you don't do that early on, that has a massive hit on the culture.
Of course. And I think as well, if you have people that, you know, have been here for a while, but who are displaying those kind of behaviours, that behaviour is learned. And if they see others doing it, then they're likely to think that that's acceptable. So I think it is really important to kind of get that message across at induction stage. But also there's still a lot of work to do for people that maybe are set in their ways and their style of working and the way that they kind of conduct themselves. So there's always learning, there's always teaching.
Yeah, and I think like the most important thing for me from a cultural perspective is I always say to everyone, like regardless of whatever's going on, like we should always move with kindness and people's well-being is at like the forefront. But at the same time, like it can't be an excuse for poor behavior.
Of course.
So I always say like we move with kindness and like we're always supportive of one another, like we champion one another. And I think it's a really difficult one for any like senior team members in the business or anyone in charge of culture, because not every single person in the business is going to adopt the culture. But the thing is that like here, everyone says that the culture is the reason as to like why they want to be here. So I think it's like a really interesting conversation, but I think a lot of businesses and like previous businesses that I've worked at haven't put the emphasis on culture, and it is so important to like myself, to Jack, like to you, but it is a difficult task to be able to. And I think it's a good one because we've got a good culture there already, but that doesn't mean it can't be improved and kind of like worked on.
I would say that we're all responsible for the culture.
Yeah.
We are all the culture. I don't think that is on one person. It's not on you. It's not on me. It's not on Jack. It's on all of us. And I think, you know, that is why it's so important that people do kind of respect, you know, the company ethos and our values and kind of what we're trying to achieve, because we all contribute towards it. And I think if somebody maybe isn't displaying those kind of cultural expectations, it does have a big impact.
And I think we've gotten better at it. Well, are trying to get better at it, because I think like whenever we first started the business, if someone came into the business and they weren't like quite the right cultural fit, potentially, and I think we've maybe even done this sort of recently, we've maybe been like more lenient with that, because like I always want to give everyone like a chance, and just because like we do something one way doesn't mean that we're always going to need to do it that way, and you can like learn from different people. But I think at the core of it, you're right in saying that like we've got our core values, which for anyone listening are transparency, team, and passion. And so like if we're not aligned in that, maybe people just aren't quite the right fit, and that's a complete rarity that kind of happens. But I think I've definitely learned as we've had the business to kind of not compromise culture, because it is so important.
It's so important. It really is.
I think another interesting thing to kind of talk about would be like comparing cultures, because I've got experience in previous agencies, and what agency culture is, and like I can see a massive shift. And like agencies are notorious for like a lack of work-life balance. And like even before COVID, if everyone was glued to their desks until like 7 o'clock and like there was no work from home, like you had to like ask and like fill out a form if you wanted to work from home and get like personal like permission from like your manager's manager, which obviously isn't good. And I think the hybrid working and more flexibility and like autonomy over like working hours is really important. But I can kind of see like the shift and how different cultures have been expressed across different sort of agencies. But you've worked in more corporate environments, so this was probably quite a big shift for you whenever it comes to comparing the two different cultures.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if anything, that's kind of what my pull was towards working here, because there's just like an authenticity around it, and there's just such an honesty with the culture. And I think, you know, we touched on it earlier and said that, you know, when there's kind of like gossipy behavior or anything that's kind of going on, you tend to hear about it. And I think in some way, you know, in my experience, you wouldn't really, you know, the person kind of who leads the business wouldn't hear about those kind of issues. But I think the fact that you do is, again, like a huge testament to the culture that we do have. But yeah, there's massive differences. And I think that this does feel more natural as a culture. I feel like, you know, what you and Jack have kind of built, I think my job really was just to come in and kind of help that culture breed amongst like our new people and the people that we already have, because it was already there. And I think there is, you know, a passion there that you just kind of don't see, you know, in a big corporate, because I think you are like a big fish in a small pond. And I think that the thing that we do well is everybody has a purpose and a reason to be here.
And I think culture can only breed if there's process in place. So like, you know, progression, for example, and I think people's ability to progression and having their progression actively managed massively aids the culture of like growth and like evolution. But, you know, we had a previous process it wasn't scalable necessarily. Then we moved over to High Bob, and now
Yeah.
we've got a process that really kind of works. But I think whilst culture is like a feeling and it's kind of like what you breed and it's the behavior, it does need process that supports it. Like you can't go around saying like, we prioritize progression and then not have anywhere to actually write down and keep store of things. And like, you know, even little things like the manager feedback survey that we've done and stuff. I think we're consistently trying to be better in terms of the process that supports our culture.
Yeah, we are. And I would totally agree with that. You do need those processes. And I think we do carry through what we say we're going to do, you know.
We try our best.
We do, yeah.
Like, and like, I know that, I think sometimes like the wider business probably doesn't see like how much work goes into it. And that's the same, like every single department, you know, would be shocked if they knew how much detail, because everyone is so specialist. We do really, really try our best, and we're consistently evolving and learning at the same time.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, as much as as we continue to develop and grow as a business and our teams grow, you know, there is an expectation on our team members to kind of adapt to that change, but it's also like learning for us to kind of adapt to that change, because every new stage we get to, we've never been there before. So it's kind of making sure that we kind of, you know, we are really confident in that next stage before we kind of bring it out.
And like, we're absolutely not perfect. Like, I would hate for anyone listening to this to kind of feel like we're kind of sat there being like, hey, we've got culture down to a T. Like, we're there's still so much work to be done. And like, I think the one thing that we do have is we've got really, really good people. And like, the people that are in the business are great. And like, I believe in each and every single one of them. And we're getting quicker at like making sure that everyone, and I want to clarify, like 9.5 times out of 10, like we do a good job of hiring a good cultural fit. Like,
we do.
But yeah, there's always work that can be done. And like, I don't think you're going to ever walk into any business, and particularly as you grow, if you've got 1,000 people in a business and you're hitting like 80% saturation of people that like really carry those company values, like, I know you'd obviously want 100%, but at the end of the day, people are people and they're going to be complex. And
definitely. And I think, you know, that's really obvious. The more we grow and the more different types of kind of personalities and peoples and needs that people have, you know, they're all kind of getting really diverse and different. And it's just being able to kind of make sure that is scalable and adaptable for us.
Are you worried about maintaining company culture as we grow?
I don't know. I'm not, because I think it's at the core of who we are. And I think that, you know, as long as we have our champions who keep kind of spreading that message and breeding that message, and no, I'm not, because I think it's already there, it's in us, and we just need to make sure that we're still as good with our hiring decisions, and we make sure, you know, we're vetting people for kind of skill set and their kind of cultural fit. I don't have any issues. And also getting our processes right. I think when they're kind of spot on, you know, and they will be.
It's a year of processes.
It's a year of processes. But, you know, I'm seeing the new office as a kind of like a real foundation
to be
for
fair,
some new processes.
At the minute, because everyone's split across so many different rooms, it's kind of hard to cultivate like a full old business culture. Like, the only time everyone is together is in theory a herd huddle.
And we don't have enough room for everybody to be there in person.
We're half and half at the minute. So the only times that we have like the full business is like at our birthday party or on Strat Day at the minute.
Probably don't have as much of their attention.
So I think I do think that will have like a massive impact. I think actually as well, like the environment that you're around massively aids like mentality, and like, you know, if you've got a tidy bedroom, then your mind is obviously like normally a lot clearer. And like our office, and I don't think you'll mind me saying this, it's a shit show at the minute.
It's a pigsty.
Yeah. There's boxes everywhere, like, and I think everyone's just kind of like grinning and bearing, like, we'll be in the new office in 4 weeks' time. But I do feel that will massively help, and like you and I working together on like just like reestablishing like cultural and like behavioral expectations. Not that anything needs to massively change, but I just think it's really important to stay on top of it as we grow.
Definitely. And, you know, as much as us putting those processes in place and making sure those kind of expectations are really visible for people, is also kind of then needing a reliance on other team members to kind of hold each other accountable and themselves. So in that environment where we are open plan and stuff, I'm really hoping that it will give people that kind of, you know, confidence to, oh guys, you know, we're a bit busy here, or, you know, can we keep it down a little bit? I think sometimes there isn't enough of like accountability, and I think that would massively help, especially, you know, with a lovely new space where we need to keep it really tidy and keep it really nice. I think that there'll be a lot more initiative from people to do that.
It's a really hard one because you want to be like respectful to everyone, like whilst you're discussing it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I don't think enough businesses talk about the challenges that come alongside growing a business and maintaining culture and like maintaining healthy work practices, but making sure that like people are getting the work done that needs to get done. And I think like I'm learning so much where we go through it, but it is a very difficult topic to discuss.
It is a difficult topic to discuss. And again, you know, it's kind of that transparency is kind of there with us kind of on how the messages that we give and the information we give to people, but also on people themselves, because, you know, there is nowhere to hide. If you have to do the work, if you're asked to do the work, it needs to be done. And you kind of, you know, that there is that kind of transparency there where there is just nowhere else to fall back on, or no one else to fall back on. And there is that expectation that, you know, we invest in you, but also equally we need you to do what you're asked to do. And I think that's kind of another point actually, is the fact that with us, I think we are kind of quite honest with what we do, and the fact that we don't kind of post everywhere online about, you know, any charities that we've donated to or anything.
Oh no, I hate that so much.
That's where I feel like when I talk about our authenticity, that's kind of what I mean. Is never kind of, nothing is ever done for like a tick boxing exercise. I feel like we are really genuine. And if we do something like that, we tell our team, and it's kind of really kept in-house, and it's really like tight.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's something I was going to raise there and I can't remember what it was. It was Mariah's point earlier about when people like describe a business as like a family. And it's yeah, it is. And I think it's really unhealthy, to be entirely honest. Someone actually did it earlier in the week and I was like, please don't do that. But I think the issue is that, like we kind of mentioned earlier, is that those like boundary setting exercises have to be put in place. And if you start thinking of like your colleagues as your family, then those boundaries naturally leak through.
Of course.
And I know that, like, you know, there's just common phrases like work wife, work husband, like partake in those if you must, if that makes sense. But I don't know if they're particularly helpful to anyone.
Work sister.
Well, yeah. But like, I think you spend so much time with the people that you work with, and like you are naturally going to build like really strong bonds with them, because you're working together and you're going through things, you're problem solving together, and that's naturally going to bond anyone. But like, I think it's really, really unhealthy whenever people refer to businesses as a family.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, in any family, you always have, you know, the grown-ups, the mum and dad, who will kind of do more than what the children do. And I think that is, or like the cousin, you know, they always have kind of heads of the family. And I think there's that then underlying kind of expectation that you don't have to do as much because you've got other people in the family who will take the lead on stuff. I much prefer like team, because teams encompass lots of, you know, you have to have teamwork to achieve any goals. And I think that's, everyone in a team is an individual. You're not just put there from no choice.
Yeah. I think like a while back, people were referring to me as mum. And I was like, do not call me mother. I was like, I'm not maternal. I have
think
no
what they
children.
refer to me as then, if you're mum.
But yeah, I just, and to be fair, I think it's like lovely in the sense of like, if people feel like comfortable and that they're supported and that like you've got their best interests in heart, and I would always want everyone to feel like that, but I'm not your work mother. So, or your mother in general. So yeah, I think that's just like a point that it's difficult because like you want everyone to feel that way supported, but you've also got to like respect professional boundaries, and it's just like a whole eking.
I mean, I don't know anybody that would probably speak to their family and then come into work and speak to their colleagues like that
in the same way.
So that's kind of again where the boundaries are really blurred and the lines are crossed.
So I think we've probably yattered on or nattered on for long enough now, but it is a really difficult topic to discuss, so hopefully whoever's listening has found this mildly insightful or helpful, but obviously when discussing anything of this nature we've got to be respectful at the same time. So yeah, thank you for listening if you have listened thus far, and make sure to like and subscribe.